Hey, beautiful friends. Welcome back to Pain to Passion Live. We are now in season 2, and I have our very first guest for season 2 here, and I'm so thrilled. My heart is so full because I get to speak with Patricia Taylor. I have been following this amazing human being on Instagram, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years at this point. I feel like it's been a long
Yeah.
time. And as you guys know, I love being able to create real relationships on Instagram. Like, it's very possible if you
Mhm.
utilize it properly. But I just have so much respect for Patricia, what she stands for, who she is. She's also really good at lip syncing.
I have
She
many
ha-
talents, okay?
so many talents, but that one is definitely like top of the list. So, Patricia, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, and I did not realize that I was the first guest of your 2nd season, so I feel extra special.
Yay!
Like, "Hello, hi."
Yeah, super cool. So I've been excited, kind of like keeping it under wraps. Oh, we have someone special
Yes.
coming.
And it's true, like, I feel like, you know, I'm not young anymore, but as young kids say, I feel like, Gabby, you've been one of the day ones, like, from, when I started this particular page and addressing the issues that I discuss, you've been there, and you've been consistent, and you've been learning and growing and there and in it, and I just
Oh,
appreciate it so much,
well,
and just the
thank
fact that we've been
you.
able to connect in that way.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And everything you say is so important and relevant and needed. And so you're one of those accounts that I'll go out of my way to see like what's she posted recently so I don't miss
Oh,
anything.
thank you. That really means a lot.
Yeah, I mean it. It's true. But for those of us who may not know you or haven't been introduced to you yet, I would love for you to just share a little bit about who you are. I don't usually read bios on the show because I love hearing what people say about themselves. It's usually a bit juicier.
Yeah,
So feel
right.
free, just tell us who Patricia is. I would love that.
Ooh, who is Patricia today? No, I'm just kidding. It's like I guess the answers could vary.
I understand.
I am in a place of, I don't know how many, if you do, or if any of your listeners have a word of the year. It's something that I have done the last, I guess, handful of years, really debated on doing it this year because sometimes for me, I'm an Enneagram 1. I can like be very, task oriented. Once I say I'm going to do something, if I don't do it, then it's, oh, this pressure and I failed. And that's a
Uh-huh.
whole other thing. But it really came to me in such a way that I knew that I had to hold on to it. And my word for this year is remember. And it was
Mm,
from this quote that a friend sent me for my birthday, which is in November. So, right before the end of the year. And it said she remembered who she was and the game changed. And
mm.
so today I'm showing up, remembering who I was, knowing who I am, and trying to change the game in whatever ways that I can in my little corner of the internet, in real life, where I live, in my locale, with my children, within my family, with my friends. I'm a Black woman living in America, and I have an experience, and I have
Mhm.
a story to tell, many stories to tell. And I'm also an anti racism educator, and I'm also a mother, and I'm also a friend, and I'm also a daughter, I'm also a sister, I'm also a
Mhm.
whole human.
Right.
But I want to be able to show up as my whole self. And in the process I've been through some things, some of that pain that we'll talk about that have, threatened to have me question who I am in my fullness.
Yeah.
And I'm back to reclaim and remember who that person is.
So much goodness already. I have like all the feelings in my gut. Just
Yeah.
you talking about remember like that word and specifically
Hmm.
remembering who you are.
Yes.
Like that is such a powerful thing to focus on. And I feel like I
Mhm.
keep running into this with different people in my space of just like you said, who am I in my fullness?
Yes,
And if we
absolutely.
can all get there and embrace that, like
Mm.
how incredible that would be, how healing that would be for ourselves, for each other. So, anyway, I could go off on that because I got really excited.
Yes.
But I would love for you to just kind of share your story of becoming this version of you and what brought you this far.
Sure, absolutely. Well, we can start at the point likely when you and I first connected. And so, for years and years, since I had my oldest daughter who is now 11. Oh my gosh.
Aw.
But I had started a mommy blog and I was doing, marketing and influencing and things for the collaborations with different companies. And I did that for a while. I did that for a long while and I was grateful for that time. But like so many, when things became more in our faces on the news, online, on social media about the murders of young Black men, Black people, and no accountability, police brutality, I was shook to the core.
Mhm.
And not for the first time, but just in a different way. Like so many, Trayvon Martin was one of those pinpoint moments of what's happening.
Mhm.
Michael Brown, one of those moments. And I really wrestled being a believer in Christ and being in this space at the time in California where I was attending. It was kind of like it was a predominantly Black church. There was no question we're going to lift up these young men, pray about these situations, talk about these situations.
Mhm.
And again, I know that's not everyone's experience, but that was mine. But then I started seeing things on social media from people who I knew who were not Black, and they
Yeah.
were having huge issues with the statement Black Lives Matter. And they were, blaming the victim and, well, he shouldn't have done this or he shouldn't have done that. And I mean, it was so disorienting. I'm like, wait a second, wait a second, wait a second. I didn't think that a simple statement with 3 words affirming my life would create all that it created as far as the
Mm.
backlash and
Yeah.
the hatred and just the willful ignorance and misunderstanding and everything that's come of it. And this was, over a decade ago. But in the course of that time, I had I just had a lot of wrestling, you know. I'm living this experience as a Black woman, but I'm not the only one. And, is it my place or space to speak out on these things? There are plenty of other people. Why would anyone listen to me? I don't have to. I don't owe anyone anything.
Right.
Like it's okay. Like if I want to kind of stay over here and take care of my children and do other things, I don't have to, be forward facing in the advocacy work that I do. And I wholeheartedly believe that for especially for Black women, people of color, like we do not owe anyone our time, our energy, our efforts, or education. We're not a resource, we are humans.
Right.
But for me, that feeling would not leave. It would not
Mm.
go away. And so in the course of this time, we actually moved from the Bay Area, California, to which is where I'm from, to Georgia, about an hour and a half south of Atlanta. And I'd been in that region before for college many, many years ago. But it was a whole different ballgame, coming with the family. And at that time, and people laugh when I say it, but it's true, we had family out there, but didn't, have any friends. And we befriended some really sweet people, some great people, and um, who happened to be white. And they invited us to our church that was labeled as this diverse space, and our family's multicultural. And so we're like, oh, okay, we'll check it out. And I have biracial daughters, and for a while, it felt like, okay, this is home,
Mhm.
until it didn't,
Mm.
until I started to dread that feeling on Sundays after whatever that week's police shooting was.
Oh, man.
And I would see people that I sing in the choir with posting about how people need to stop whining and being the victims and get over racism.
Oh, man.
Or I would go and the pastor would say, I think the problem with all these Black Lives Matter people and all these Blue Lives Matter people is they just need to know that Jesus loves them. And I'm like, wait, no, no, no. And at the same time, like I'm a leader and I'm really trying. Like I'm trying to see what is my role in all this. Again, like this is the question, like I can't shake it.
Yeah.
What's my role in all this? Do I have like it went finally from do I have a role in this to what's my role in this? I can at least be that honest with myself that I wasn't gonna let this go and God did not want me to let this go.
Mhm.
But at the same time I was, seen as a leader in the church. I had a leadership role. I, was given different opportunities and it started to feel very tokenized, very tokenizing because the things that matter to me living in this skin that I'm in impacting people who look like me were being overlooked and ignored
Mhm.
by the same people who were like, "Oh yeah, share your testimony about this because we want to have the Black woman, to round out our panel." But
Mhm.
when it came to me in tears, crying over accidentally seeing this video I didn't want to see of this Black man being murdered, it was like, "Oh, okay, well, we just can't talk about that here." And so I remember distinctly that, oh, it was a summer of 2016, I believe, because 2016 was quite the year. But I believe it was the summer of 2016 when both Lando Castile and Alton Sterling were murdered by the police in the same week. And there was a police shooting in Dallas. And I believe that
Mhm.
you lived in Dallas for a time. I don't know if you were there then, but there, were a couple police officers who were killed by a gunman.
Yeah.
And all of it is horrible and tragic. Yet I remember specifically in four different spaces, three actual in-person services, meetings, gathering of sorts, and one as part of this kind of online for mothers for Christian women that I was a part of at the time, all predominantly white spaces. And in this same weekend, from let's say Friday to Tuesday, these four different services, no one mentioned any of this at all,
Mm.
except for one person at one point said, "Let's pray for the police officers and their families."
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, "Uh huh, yes, and."
Mhm.
Like I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not disputing that," and there
Mhm.
was nothing. In a couple of the spaces, there was online forums, and I actually said, "Hey, it's really important that we pray for this. It's really important that we bring this up."
Wow.
Never happened.
Wow.
And so um I could not take it anymore. And at that time, it was like there were so many catalysts leading up to it, but that was the thing. I felt invisible. I felt like, if you don't care about these lives, then how do I think that you care about my life? And
Yeah.
also, this is happening within the body of Christ, where we're all supposed to matter to each other. And so I wrote, that was in the summer of 2016, that September, because also we were talking about this a little bit before we press record. It's like now the world's on fire in so many ways, so many things
Yeah.
are happening. But that's also when the protests were happening by Colin Kaepernick.
Mhm.
And so, and awful things were being said about him, and they were all race related. And I wrote a post that September that said, "Some thoughts from your Black friend."
Mm.
And it was basically, I've heard all that you've had to say. Those of you within my context, because I'm not at all saying that other people were not feeling what I'm feeling or expressing it, and I'm sure doing it better. But where I was in my context, I didn't have anyone being that voice.
Yeah.
And I realized that I needed to be that voice. And
Wow.
it was for me to speak. And I said, "I've heard you. Now it's time for you to hear me. This is what it's like to live in the current times, in the skin that I'm in, trying to just exist, and seeing people who claim that they love me, love my family, and are here for me and want me to bring my authentic self and be a part of the community.
Mm.
And yet they want me to check my color at the door, or don't talk about these hard things because they make me uncomfortable." And I was terrified, like terrified. You
Wow.
never know how people perceive you. I've
Right.
received messages because people are like, when you write, you just, it's a straight to the point. You don't pull any punches, and I'm like, well, I guess, but but like I was terrified, Gabby, because I
Yeah.
knew where I was. I knew my context, and I was like, if I really commit to this, I'm gonna experience a lot of loss and a lot of pain.
Yeah.
I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming. And I made some changes, but still the pain and loss happened.
Right.
And so at that time, all of this was even before I began the page where you and I connected, the Patricia underscore A underscore Taylor, where I shifted my focus away from mommy blogger, to put it in the category, from
Mhm.
mommy blogger things, into speaking up about advocacy and racial justice, and anti-racism education. And at the time, I was part of a different church, a church plant that I was there from day one. And my
Wow.
youngest was still in my belly, and it was, let's say, a lot of growth has happened on my part too since then. But it was a church that was still white led, but from the beginning said, no, this is going to be a fabric in our community. Like within this church space, we're going to be different. We're going to show up different. We're building this thing from the ground up. And we are not going to let, race and racism and what's happening now be apart from what we're doing. And I really believed it
Oh man.
until I hit too close to home. And it was it was so painful
Yeah.
because I don't know about you, but it's hard to have hope for a lot of reasons. But I always wanted to see the best in people. Like, don't get me wrong, I have boundaries, and especially when we're talking about online spaces, because I can't, like, I cannot entertain the trolls and the hatred, and people have no idea, just the way that some people will talk to you online and think that they can address you in any kind of way.
Yeah.
But in good faith, I want to believe that people really, I want to believe the best in people.
Hmm.
And I think that's a wonderful quality, and I don't want to ever want to lose that. But I know in this case, it was it made things more complex because I'm hearing what I'm being told, but their actions aren't lining up with that.
Right.
And then they'll do or say just enough for me to be like, okay, 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 maybe they were listening. Okay, maybe they got it, or I'll have this like super heavy conversation. And this happened. I mean, everything I'm sharing are things that happened. But I had this really deep conversation after, what XY situation that occurred. And I gave our my pastor at the time permission to share, a bit of that, on a social media post that he was writing, which was encouraging people to, like, we need to listen to our black siblings right now.
Hmm.
And looking back, I realized his inconsistency was to do things like that to make himself look good, to name himself an ally. But in our private conversations, he would constantly shut me down. He would tell me that everything I posted, he'd be in my DMs all the time. Like he was the most,
Oh
I don't use
no.
social media ever, but he'd always be in my DMs to tell me that my posts were giving him pause. Like that was his favorite phrase. And I would and I would always,
I
like, I
just got
cringe.
to
I know, like I I was like, I think I threw up in my mouth a little bit saying it. But
yeah.
um, but it was just very, like I said, disorienting because I'm a part of this family, this community. I mean, to the point that they we'd asked them, this couple who was leading our church, who I was best friends with the wife, to be the godparent of our youngest child.
Wow.
Like this was not like a fly by night, relationship. But as I found my voice, and it took a while, I first started that page a year before you probably found me, and posted maybe 5 times
Mm,
all year because I was terrified.
yeah.
And I finally was like, okay, must rip the band-aid off, and I finally just went for it, and then the summer of 2020 happened, and I felt like I was being shot out of a cannon.
I
But all the
bet.
while, God was like, well, you've been preparing for this, so it may feel
Hmm.
like it, but it's actually been years of preparation for this moment.
Hmm.
All this to say, and feel free to jump in and cut me off because I'm like, this is just, I'm telling my story.
I love it.
But I, for a solid 2 years, was in this situation, if not longer, that I really wrestled. I really wrestled. Every time I said something is very wrong.
Hmm.
I know something is very wrong. But when I ask what's wrong, it would be deflection, it would be avoidance, it would be, oh, no, 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 I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, all these things.
Hmm.
Until it got to the point where I made the decision to take a step back. Um, I did not officially leave at that point, but I took a step back. COVID was also happening then. Um, And that is could be a whole other conversation in and of itself. I saw some things that really were disheartening in the way that the church was handling COVID at the time. My mom almost
Mhm.
died from COVID. She almost lost her
Oh,
life.
wow.
And they were great at dropping off groceries, but then they, in a very surprising turn of events, opened up the doors and were not requiring masks very early on.
Mm,
And just a lot of things that occurred that I'm like, I'm not in alignment with what I'm seeing,
yeah,
experiencing, witnessing, and still receiving this behind the doors um, censoring from
right.
leadership. And it got to the point where I was told directly, well, I should say this, I was ready to finally say, that's it. I can't do this anymore. Our family and I are officially going to leave this church. And it was heartbreaking because everything about our lives were wrapped up in this community
Yeah.
because that's what they invite you to do.
Mhm.
As this is like, we're here for you. Come as you are. This is a space that you can be your authentic self until you make me uncomfortable. Then we want to throw it back.
Uh-huh.
But all of our friendships, our daughters, friends, our connections were all in this space.
Mhm.
And when we were finally making the decision, and we knew, like, it's one of those things when but it takes a while to get there, because
Totally.
it's
Yeah.
not easy.
Right.
um, but finally ready to have that conversation and say, and I still had the best hope, even though
Mhm.
I look back and realize that I had endured spiritual abuse. There were
Yeah.
conversations I had one on one with the pastor at the time that were incredibly demeaning. They were abusive, and along with racial trauma, along with toxic theology, just all wrapped up into one.
Yeah.
But that very week that the conversation was to be had, probably over FaceTime or online because I didn't trust them with how they're
Mhm.
handling the pandemic. Uh, the year started with the insurrection,
Yep.
and they tiptoed around it during the service that Sunday. And also that weekend, I saw that they unfollowed me on social media. The church pages had
Oh,
unfollowed me on social
no.
media, and I'm like, wow, okay, okay. I really wanted to do what I felt, and no one can define that for you. But what I felt was exiting with integrity,
Mhm.
and wanting to have this conversation and wanting to say I knew that the friendship was over. I knew that unless major changes happened, which again you never know, um, that it was going to be over, and it was crushing. But I also knew what I had to do, and I was so hurt by being discarded in that way, in such a juvenile way,
Mhm.
by these same people who had said before, oh, you're a voice that we want and need, and we need you to lead this conversation because we don't know what we're doing. But then when I lead the conversation, it's whoa, 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 you can't lead because I need to be the one to lead.
Mhm.
I, the white man, and with power, because I'm the one who's been appointed by God. I'm the one who needs to lead.
Yeah.
And so there are a million stories in between that I could share. But we finally got to this point. I needed to take a little bit longer after the insurrection occurred to address this, but I did. I had a conversation and I asked directly, you know, why was I unfollowed, or why did this happen? And there was a lot of, stammering and kind of jumping around, but ultimately it was, oh yeah, that was me, but I meant to do it from my personal page.
Oh my gosh.
Because basically I was finding all your posts offensive and they weren't
Yeah.
settling well with me, and I'm like, oh, the posts where I'm calling out racism and white supremacy weren't setting well with you. I'm going to say this again, but I've said this numerous times. I think you need to look within yourself.
Yeah.
I think you have to just be introspective, because you can say whatever you want and you can encourage the masses to do these things, but if you're not doing it for yourself, what good is it? And that
Yeah.
goes for all of us. That goes for me too. I have to learn a lot always.
Mhm.
Things change and evolve, and I have to change and evolve too. And in that conversation, it turned out that there were grudges that the pastor had been holding against me for like 8 9 months, Basically for him, it all came down to I stepped out of my lane and had disrespected his authority. And so
Oh
I got a
goodness.
letter. I got a letter. And it's, if you talk to many BIPOC people, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and many Black women who have had this space and had their foray into white evangelical spaces, it's like there's a playbook.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make the pain any less, but there is something heartbreaking and also connecting when you know you're not the only one.
Yeah.
But again, pregnant belly from the beginning, part of establishing this church as a leader, walked into as leadership, to ultimately getting a letter, an email listing all these grievances that he had been holding against me for nearly a year of this ongoing situation. And there were things stated like, your tone is why we can't have the levels of trust that both of us desire.
Oh my gosh.
And the way that you address me is a direct reflection of how you honor God. And you will need to change, and maybe I've allowed too much room and space for familiarity, but you'll need to change, or otherwise your presence in our community is going to be a detriment. And it went on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And then it wrapped up with, but we love you and your family.
Mhm.
And I know that I've said some hard things, but if you'd like to talk about it sometime. And I was like, I'm done. I'm
Mhm.
done. I never looked back.
Mhm.
I'm done. And that was it. But the whole community was lost in that moment.
Oh my gosh.
One person who was a dear friend kind of hung in there with me, but ultimately made her choice,
Mm.
and I could not be in a space, and we shouldn't have to be in a space where, as a victim of abuse, of racism, and these are white people, let me be clear, because
Mhm.
I'm not saying there are not issues and problems with churches of color as well, but that's not my story.
Right.
But I can't be friends with you when you say to me, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. You were victimized, but I'm gonna go listen to him preach on Sunday
Mhm.
because it's just, I just don't want to go anywhere else. This is where my husband wants us to stay. And that's complicated. And that's not, that's complicated. But I knew for me where I had to draw those lines. And one person for a while of this entire church community would check in, would check in, would check in. And it still hurts because it was still to her benefit, in the sense that, not that I believe she was insincere, but I wonder if I had not had my knowledge and my experience to offer, if she would have tapered off as well.
Mm.
But she was at the time a white woman fostering Black children.
Mhm.
And so she had a reason to be personally invested in racial dynamics in a way that most of the other congregation did not.
Mhm.
And there were, not many, but there were other, Black families and families of color. But the ones who stayed are the ones who either did not speak up or rock the boat, or those who aligned with the idea that speaking of racism is more uh, divisive than actually addressing racism. And that was not, nor was it ever going to be me. so um,
No.
so eventually that last relationship, for whatever it was, it that also ended, when a circumstance happened where this woman needed help, and she got help from the pastor and from the church. And she kind of tried to come back to me and say, well, I know you've had your experience with them, that was awful, but let me tell you about how helpful they were for me. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I said, people who are abused in whatever form aren't going to abuse everybody, because then the jig would be up. But
Totally.
also, of course, they're going to help, because in her, that situation is, her details to share. But it was a situation in which he could look like the white savior and the hero, and
Mm.
someone wasn't questioning him. How dare I, a Black woman, question this white man who God put in charge? So in one breath, he actually said, "Well, I just don't know what I'm doing, and I wish I had someone who could help me in this
Hmm.
conversation." But in the next breath, it's, "You need to listen to my authority, and how dare you overstep and do anything that would question my authority."
Hmm.
So it's been it's been something that's really informed a lot of who I am in these recent years, because I mean, I'm in my early 40s, and I have such great respect and admiration and adoration for Black women in particular who are who they are
Hmm.
at a young age and know who they are and will not compromise that. And that was just not my story, for a
Yeah.
lot of different reasons. I had a lot of fear, a lot of too much concern for what other people would think, and, a lot of doubts. And for a while in there, I did lose a bit of myself, because when you're in that situation and people tell you who they think you are, if you're not sure about who you know you are, then you can start to take that on.
Yeah.
And so I've done, and I'm proud of myself for the healing work that I've done and I've continued to do. And it isn't just in church spaces, but in other relationships, and just the way I show up in life. The more I grow into myself, and it's never too late to grow into yourself. But the more I grow into myself, the more I know what and who I'm not going to accept. Because if it's anyone or anything that's asking me to stay in the box that they've put me in, then I don't want it.
Hmm.
And I can't go back. I
Yeah.
can't go back. I think of Angel Reese and all the controversy that this young Black confident woman, this baller, absolute baller, stirred up, because I mean, white America was so mad that she was unapologetic, and she
Yeah.
just turned 21 like a week ago.
Oh man.
I mean, I just
If only.
yeah, right. But I think of those examples, and I want so much for everyone, but particularly because it's my story, for young Black women to know being Black and accepting your Blackness and showing up in your full self does not need to be limited to stereotypes or caricatures. It doesn't need to be limited to what people want to take from you, but then they don't want all of you. And that's helped to continue to inform this journey that I'm on. That I'm still going to show up as me. And if I can't show up fully as me in this space or in this place or with these people, then I don't want it. But it would be a lie to say that there isn't that huge pain involved, because
Definitely.
we all want that belonging,
Hmm.
and we all want to know that who we are at our core is fully accepted. And we realize it's not. There's a pain there.
Mm. Yeah.
But if we can accept ourselves, then it does make it easier, because you'll also find your people,
Absolutely.
you know.
Yeah. Wow.
So there's my little that's my little story. The end.
And goodbye.
Right.
No, that was so amazing. Like my mind is just like whirring with all of the different questions that I have and thoughts that I have. First of all, what I want to say is I understand that feeling of like um seeing this younger generation just step into their own, and you're
Mhm.
like, oh man, it's taken me a crap ton of work to get here.
Right. I'm like, I could be
But
your mama.
exactly, like for real. But I think just to give yourself a lot of credit, because it's people like you who have chosen to do this work, this hard work in this generation, and this age group that we are in, um, doing that work that has really paved the way for this
Mhm.
younger generation to be able to step into that.
Yeah.
So I just want to say kudos to you. Like you've done the hard work to do the thing, but it's such a beautiful example for those who are coming up behind you. Um, I think it's pretty freaking amazing.
Thank you.
And then the other thoughts that I have, first of all, is just this, as you're describing this dynamic that you had in your church, this spiritual abuse, like you said it straight out. It's
Mhm.
so legitimate what
Mhm.
you experienced as spiritual abuse, and wrapped up in you wanting to tell the truth about
Yes.
racism and your experience, which is a true experience for you and many others. And just like how this dynamic plays out in so many different ways in
Mhm.
church power areas. But all I could think about was like, it sounds exactly like being in a relationship with a narcissist.
Yes.
Like, okay, the whiteness can be really
Mhm.
narcissistic. Let's be
Mhm.
honest. He's saying to you on behind closed doors, like, you're saying too much. This is offensive, blah, blah, blah. And then posting on social media, she said this and I learned that.
Mhm.
And it's so disorienting. You're
Yes.
like, okay, which one is actually you?
Right.
But
Right.
it's that projection of
Mhm.
like who they want people to see them as.
Mhm.
But
That
I guess,
ego
yeah,
informs
exactly.
in so many ways.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I
No,
just
no, you're absolutely right. That
Mhm.
ego. And I think um if more people who look like me could just recognize that,
Mm.
like there is this narcissistic tendency that we have
Mhm.
to, be allies or to be supportive in public. But like you said, what are you doing? What's the work you're doing introspectively? Let
Right.
me
In
ask you
private.
this,
Yes.
and I know you'll
Yes.
answer honestly.
Yes.
It's like, has any real change occurred in your character and in your life and in you becoming the fullest version of who you are? Has any of that happened without pain?
No.
No.
Mm-mm.
See, that's going to be the same for anyone who
Yes.
chooses to change.
Yes. Mhm.
The problem is so many of us are unwilling to go through the pain
Right.
that someone with a narrative like you will unveil in someone like me. It's like,
Yes.
ow,
Right. Yes. I
that
love how you
hurt,
said
Patricia.
unveil. Yes. I love how you said that though, because it's this unveiling.
Yeah.
It's not if we can have that perspective and of it being an unveiling, it's not a tearing down, but
Hmm.
it's a ripping off
Yes.
this taking off the layers that it's a shedding
Yes.
and it is painful. It hurts. I
Hmm.
cried many nights. I
Hmm.
had to have hard conversations with my children about why we don't see their friends anymore.
Mm.
You know, we thought that we finally found the place where our family could exist as our full selves, and it turned out to not be the case.
Mm.
We left the city not just because of that, but that was, we were already at the point of being like, okay, I think our time here is up. We've been there for 7 8 years, but that was it was no longer a safe space for us, period. And it hurts and infuriates me, I'm not gonna lie, because that's another thing I was also told. I was so angry because I'm supposed to just smile and nod when people are being murdered, and the oppressors always want to dictate how the oppressed should respond to
Yeah.
things. But the the painful part is that it matters to you too, because you are
Right.
being impacted. Those who consider themselves white, those who
Hmm.
are being impacted by whiteness, you're being hurt by all this too.
Yeah.
Like, there are generations that you have to undo within yourself, that just like there are generational trauma that I am experiencing and
Hmm.
undoing. The same goes for you. White supremacy harms every single body, everyone. There's no escaping it. But you can make a choice of how active or inactive you want to be to bring solutions and to be honest with yourselves and to make the changes within yourselves and to make those changes within your family unit, your community, wherever you are.
Hmm.
And instead, so many people choose, this is what I want people to see,
Yeah.
rather than this is the real work to get to a better place.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this because again, there are a million little stories I could share, but this is important. This is how deep it goes. This all happened at the beginning of the year. It was January 13th. I will never forget that date when I got that letter. That was a Thursday. That next Monday, that next Sunday, let me say this, was a recorded church service in which you could tell they're reading from a script. And the wife, who was at the time, until she fell off long before this, my best friend, because it became too much for her to handle, her, the white woman, to handle the conversation. And she definitely did call me, say I was so angry at one point.
Wow.
But they read what sounded like a scripted um, part where they were doing a recap of the year. And they get to a point where they say, we were living in a military town. And they say, we've lost members for different reasons, some due to moves and some due to deployments, and some due to differences of political opinions. And we also learned that white supremacy is really bad. Like, it was so like, oh
Oh
my
my
gosh, like,
gosh.
are you kidding me? So,
Whiplash.
right. And then that Monday, do you know that this pastor, this leader, who days before sent me this letter, telling me that my tone was too much and I was the problem, showing up as my whole Black self, posted a quote from the letter from Birmingham jail on MLK Day,
No, he did not. Of course
and
he did.
said that he too could see himself in the white moderate, and he too was listening and learning.
I'm so
But
sorry.
that's how deep it goes.
Yeah.
And thank you, and I do appreciate that, because it was the most painful thing,
Yeah.
and it is whiplash. I'm like, is this for real?
Yeah.
Because you question yourself when you're in this like manipulative gaslighting
Yeah.
scenario. You're like, what's real?
Hmm.
Am I this person? I can't be that person. Like, how is it that the people who I trusted enough to say I want to name you as a goddaughter of my child can be so wrong about me?
Hmm.
But people like Gabby, who I've interacted with online, who we haven't had in real life connection, but she sees and she's willing to examine herself and to learn and to really learn and to really show up and to really make changes. How is it that I can be seen as so different?
Yeah.
But I hit too close. I
Hmm.
hit too close to things that they were unwilling to change and address. And so in many situations with people with unhealth, people who want that power, that grab for power, I need to eliminate any threat to that power or anything that's going to force me to change in a way that I simply don't want to, because it still benefits them.
Hmm.
But again, what's heartbreaking is that really you're losing too. It doesn't
Yeah.
benefit you.
Right.
Like, what a small world you're living in,
Hmm.
and what a small God you've made, to
Yes.
think that this is how we need to minimize God into this little box to make sure we keep the power and keep things the way that we think that they always are or always should be,
Hmm.
rather than be so expansive and welcoming the change. And it hurts. There has
Yeah.
not been a single experience I've gone through to get me to this point that has not been without that pain. But I
Hmm.
found my people along the way.
Yeah.
I found more of myself along the way. And we can go from survival mode to thriving if we're willing to do that.
Absolutely. So powerful. So beautiful. I could literally talk to you for hours.
Well, thank you for making this space.
So,
I
so
really do
much.
just feel, I just feel that safety, and I think that says so much about who you are and how you show up. So thank you.
Well, good. I'm so glad. It's definitely my goal is to create a safe space for people. And I do just want to validate, like, I see you and I see that you've had to bear the brunt of a lot of pain, like a lot of Black women and Black men in this country
So I'm wearing
because
my
of,
Black Women Matter shirt today.
yes, yes, you are. Where we white people who look like me have decided not to endure the pain and so just dump it on you. And my heart breaks over that. And I very much hope that we'll see more of a wave of willingness to endure pain, to become fully ourselves, which includes seeing everybody as they fully are. And you're beautiful. You're amazing.
Oh, thank you. You too.
Thank you
I
for
really
being here.
appreciate
I'll
this
have to
so
have you
much.
on again because I had
Yeah.
like 16 more
I know. Look, we can definitely do a part
questions.
two.
Yes, we'll have to do
Now
a
we've laid
part
the
two.
foundation. I've done all the
Yes.
talking, so we can get to
Oh, I love
some
it.
questions and
I love
answers next time.
it. You talk as much as you want. I love it. So thank you, Patricia. I would love for people to be able to connect with you. I'll put all your links and stuff in the show notes, but if you want to share
Absolutely.
here, like what's the best way to connect with you, that would be great.
Sure. I would say that on my Instagram, Patricia_A_Taylor is the best way to connect with me because there through my link tree, I have links to everywhere else where I exist on the online spaces. So Facebook, sometimes Twitter, sometimes a website that is under construction, but yeah, that's where you'll find me.
Cool. Perfect. So yes, go follow her. She's fabulous. Continue to learn and listen and grow and just enjoy her lip syncing, all of the things. So again, thank you. You're wonderful. I'm so glad that you were able to be here today, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.